You ever have those weeks when it's 2 p.m. on Monday, it feels like it should be Friday, and you're just done with the whole week already? Those are the kinds of weeks when I feel like I need to read something that feels like a happy hug. And so in this video, I'm sharing 7 books that I reread when I am just done with the week and I badly need an escape. 6 of these books are fantasy because that's a genre that generally has a lot of light and delight. The 7th book is a surprise genre, but it's one of my absolute favorites. More on that later though. So we're going about this in order of shortest to longest read. So the first story is actually a short story. It's called The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. The Paper Menagerie is a short story about a boy named Jack who is biracial, so he has a white father and his mother is a Chinese immigrant. When he's a kid, Jack's mom makes these paper origami animals for him to play with, and as she blows into them, she sort of breathes life into them and they come to life and jump around and play with him. It's the most delightful thing I've ever read, and now I want an origami cat that will jump around on my desk and curl up in my lap. Jack gets bullied for his mixed heritage, so he sort of distances himself from his mother. He refuses to speak to her in Chinese. He packs away the origami animals and gets more conventional little boy toys to play with. And the whole story is a really powerful look at the kinds of experiences that children of immigrants have, but it's also a really poignant look at how children sort of distance themselves from their parents as they grow up. And it's just an amazing read because it's a really short story, but it has an enormous heart. And in just a few pages, Ken Liu manages to explore themes of family and identity and regret and growing up. It always reminds me that there are more important things in life than the 9 a.m. Monday morning train wreck of a meeting that has just ruined my week. And every time I read it, I call my parents afterwards and it makes me feel better. The next book is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. The Little Prince is written from the perspective of a pilot who crash lands in the desert and he meets this young boy whom he calls the Little Prince. Now the boy goes on to tell him about his home planet and all of his adventures on various other asteroids that he explores and how he ended up on Earth. And it's this funny, unflattering look at how grown-ups tend to identify themselves by their job titles. So the 4th book introduces this businessman who believes that he owns the stars, and so he spends all of his time literally counting the stars because he's a businessman and he needs to know what he owns. It's hilarious, but it also really makes you think about what we're doing with our lives as adults. My absolute favorite part of this book, though, are the themes of friendship and wonder that Exupéry explores. The Little Prince has a rose growing on his home planet, and he initially believes that that rose is just unique in the entire universe and there's nothing else like it. But when he lands on Earth, he sort of finds a rose garden, and he's initially disappointed to learn that the rose on his home planet isn't unique and one of a kind. But he eventually realizes that the fact that he's had a relationship with a rose, that he's been talking to it and maintaining a friendship with it, makes that rose unique to him. And it's this lovely exploration of how our relationships make us unique and make us who we are. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was the first Chronicles of Narnia book that I read, and I absolutely love it because it really captures the wonder of finding and exploring a new magical world. There's plenty of adventure and familial conflict as these kids go out and explore Narnia and find their own roles within that magical world. As an older sibling, I also just relate so hard to Peter because more than half the time, I feel like the responsible person who just has to keep this grumpy younger sister from doing absolutely dumb shit. Every time I read this book, it makes me so happy because I'm just joining 4 squabbling, fighting siblings as they explore this whole new world of magic and wonder and responsibility. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. This is chronologically the fourth book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and there are just so many good things about this book. It's a fun, magical adventure story. There are lots of cool islands that they explore along this voyage. There are magical settings and mystery and wonder and adventure, and I love it. There are a couple of recurring characters, Edmund and Lucy. Edmund really grows into his wisdom in this book, and he really comes across as like this paragon of this is what is right and that's how things should happen. Lucy is dealing with questions of self-esteem, and she's insecure about the fact that she's not as pretty as Susan, and so she's questioning her self-worth. And she goes on this journey through this book of overcoming all of these doubts and anxieties about herself. Eustace is a very, very fun character because firstly, his name sounds like useless, and in the beginning, he absolutely is. He's unbearable. But it's so much fun to follow along as he goes through this voyage and he learns that his actions have consequences. And so he can't be a selfish, stuck-up ass and not have any consequences to his behavior. He has a whole redemption arc and it is a delight to read. Also, his friendship with Rippercheap is so cute. The next book is The Lives of Christopher Chant by Diana Wynne Jones. Now, I discovered Diana Wynne Jones as an adult and was absolutely enchanted. She always sets her stories in these worlds that are weirdly magical. They have rules, but it also feels like almost anything is possible, and it's amazing to read through them. The book follows this young boy called Christopher who's destined to become the next Crestomancy. And I actually really love how Diana Wynne Jones handles this position of Crestomancy. The Crestomancies are basically the most powerful magicians within the system of worlds, and they are masters of magic. They travel through various worlds and have grand adventures. But because it's actually Christopher's destiny to be a Crestomancy, Jones paints it as a sort of trap. It's something that is enforced on Christopher and it takes away his freedom, and it's so beautiful to read his rebellious reaction to all of it. And throughout all of this young boy is learning and discovering and growing in the most believable ways. This book will always be one of my favorite reads because it's full of such believable characters and such wondrous and magical settings. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Now, I came to this book from the Studio Ghibli film, which I absolutely adore, but honestly, this book is just so much more. It's a magical adventure that's just oozing with charm and full of lovable characters, and it explores these ideas of family and growth and identity and self-worth, and it's beautiful. I love how Jones writes sort of ambiguous characters. So Sophie is cursed to be an old woman, but she's fiery and determined and energetic. Calcifer is supposed to look like this evil fire demon, but he's just an anxious little cookie. Howl is an absolute delight because, true to his name, he is the ultimate drama queen. He's prone to being overly dramatic and he throws tantrums and hysterics. But he's also strangely kind. Like, I can completely see why Sophie fell in love with him. Jones also manages to take like 15 different narrative threads and weave them together into an ending that somehow makes sense. It's literally impossible to put this book down because it's so fast-paced. And then at the heart of all of this is this young girl, Sophie, who's discovering that she is worth more than what she ever believed. She is powerful and unique and worthy of love and acceptance. Okay, now here's the surprise book. It's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Some of my happiest days in the year are the ones in which I reread Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. To summarize my enthusiasm for this book, hello, Mr. Darcy. He's hot and he's rich. But there's also the fact that yes, he's proud, and yes, he's stubborn, and yes, he's prejudiced, and he pushes away the woman that he loves because of that pride and that prejudice. But eventually, he also changes, and the beauty of that is that he doesn't change because he thinks that, oh, I'm going to change and then Elizabeth will come back to me and we'll fall in love and we'll live happily ever after. He changes because he recognizes the fact that Elizabeth's assessment of him is right. He is a bit of a stuck-up ass. He changes solely to be a better person, and that's just, it's so healthy, it's such a green flag. And then of course there's Elizabeth Bennet herself, who's sassy, she's witty, she's humorous, she's stubborn and proud and absolutely convinced that she's right about everything. But somehow she's just so lovable. What makes Pride and Prejudice particularly special to me is just Austen's narrative style. She is the queen of show don't tell. Even characters who are like annoying, the fact that they are annoying is portrayed through their dialogue and their mannerisms. Austen will never tell you that Mr. Collins is annoying, but by the end of the book, you will want to repeatedly smack his head into a wall because, oh my god, he's annoying. Honestly, Pride and Prejudice is a delightful read because there's just so much nuance in it that you can just explore and dig around in forever. I could go on for ages about every single thing that I love about this book, but I won't. I will leave you to hopefully discover its joy for yourself during one of those dreadful weeks when you need a pick-me-up. And trust me, this book will deliver it. If you like this reading list for dreadful days, you may also like this other video I made about Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. It's another delightful read that has some surprising life lessons hidden in it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.